Road. And my first question is for Natural Lands. It seems that the Crebilly property is a bit environmentally sensitive given the certain waterways that are on it that feed into the Brandywine Creek that provide drinking water for much of our region. Can you talk about what potential development may be at the size of the Toll Brothers development or similar what the impacts that might have on the Brandywine Creek and drinking water?
So generally, development is going to bring with it increased impervious surfaces, rooftops, roads, sidewalks, that kind of thing. That increases runoff that may include road salts and pesticides and other chemicals. So there can be certainly a water quality impact to receiving streams. We also see an increase often in flooding issues and things like that. If the stormwater is not adequate to handle everything that comes off of a development.
Do I have time for one more question?
Oh yeah, you have another minute and a half.
Okay, great. So there's been a lot of talk about the property, the value of its beauty being in its farmland, and I think there's 70% of the property is actually farmland. Do you know if that's correct?
I don't know that.
Yeah, I'd just be guessing. I'm looking at David to give me a thumbs up if that sounds right, but I don't know.
Okay, and so the equestrian facilities that are there, the historic stable and then all of the acres of pasture, I believe that's on one of the lots that is to be sold and put under conservation easement.
Correct.
Okay, do you know what acreage that is by any chance?
Well, collectively it's, actually I do. 102 between the 4 parcel lots, and this map is too small. The equestrian lot, David would probably know it off the top of his head, I just don't.
Do you know? Do you know off the top of your head?
They run between 25 and 30 some acres.
So what Jack is saying is they run between 25 and 30 acre size lots.
And each of the lots could be used for equestrian uses, not just that one. But they're 25 to 30-ish acres in size. But farming can definitely continue in each of those lots.
Thank you. So basically that, I think, constitutes a very beautiful part of the property, and that is going to be preserved. So the only thing that is going to be gone as far as farmland is property. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that many of Natural Lands preserves have been built on old farms, some of the most beautiful and popular. I think, is it true that Cheslin was once part of the giant King Ranch? Okay, and so that property is definitely not just a bunch of weeds and a tangled mess. It's very beautiful and very popular, and you have a lot of people that go there to walk their dogs, to recreate, to
Ma'am, sorry, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, down here. Your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Virginia Burton, 202 Swinburne Road in Westtown. So on one of the slides, it was showing examples of what earned income actually is. I guess my question is, are you sure of what it excludes? Because I don't have a Keystone tax return in front of me.
Well, I would always say is always consult, if you have specific questions about your individual tax situation, consult your accountant or your tax attorney. But I am just for perspective, I'm going to humble brag here, I can't help it. I'm the president of the Chester County Tax Collection Commission. So, mic drop. So yes, I'm about as confident as I can.
Okay, because my concern is, as someone who also has a tax background, that I'm not sure that people have a good understanding of what earned income tax is, and that it can include RMDs depending on whether they were taxed previously or not, depending on what investment they're coming from.
Yeah, but I think for the purpose of this is why I'm saying you need to consult a tax attorney. If you have an MRD or RMD, excuse me, like you're in a tax bracket in which you have a tax attorney, and that's where it gets complicated. For 99% of Westtown residents, they get a W-2, they get a 1099 for consulting work. That's what you pay earned income tax on. There are golden parachute situations for, you know, high-flying former executives where it gets complicated, but for 99% of us, those are not.
But we do have a lot of people who are either retired or nearing retirement where they are going to have to think about things like that. And
Wait, retired minimum distributions? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about some exotic tax vehicle. Oh, retired minimum distributions. That's just so we're clear here. When you hit 70 and a half, you're required by the IRS to take a certain amount of your 401k
Correct.
based on a schedule. So that's 401k income. And 401k, again, I'm not a tax attorney and I'm not an accountant. So if you have any questions, contact the professionals, but that would be examples of non-earned income. You do not pay earned income on that. That's a statement of fact.
Okay, I would encourage people to look further into that because I disagree on that front. Because if it was not taxable before, part of that R&D does become taxable, and depending on your level of income, it can also make some of your Social Security tax, your Social Security income taxable as well. So that's just something for people to think about who are at or nearing retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, your name and address, please.
Ray DeAndrea, 1514 Marlborough Road. I have a prepared statement about the battlefield. It does have a couple questions, not necessarily for you people, but would you allow me to read it? It takes about 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
You have 2 minutes and 48 seconds.
I'd like to address the undecided voters here. We have a map of the proposed 300 acres with a portion of the battlefield under private easement and the township-owned battlefield. It is true that most of the battlefield area would be under private ownership. However, most is not all. Westtown Township would still own about 30 acres of the battlefield if this deal goes through. The portion of our ownership in the upper corner of New Street and Pleasant Grove Road, West Pleasant Grove Road, is a rectangular area about the size of 12 football fields. Many of us drive by there every day, taking the shortcut around the farm to avoid the traffic on 202. This location sits at the highest point of the entire farm. This is a photo of my Uncle Jack. You can't see it very well, it's 50 years old. He enlisted in the Army at age 18, and after spending 3 weeks in Germany, died in World War II combat only 10 days before the end of the war. He looks more like a choir boy here than an infantry soldier, but his legacy is rock solid. Only one of my 6 siblings has ever visited his gravesite in the Netherlands. Most of us here have a relative who made the ultimate sacrifice. How do we honor their selfless, courageous contributions to our democracy? This question: did you know that Westtown Township does not have a memorial dedicated to war veterans? The open space referendum could change that with a yes vote. There are many nonprofits which specialize in military history that could be a source of funding, although in truth the cost of a plaque or statue is small with little maintenance required. This land associated with our revolutionary history is sacred land. It should not be bulldozed over as part of a real estate development or end up under a millionaire's horse barn. The only way to guarantee that situation is to vote yes. One other question. I would respectfully ask David Robertson's permission to provide tours of the property.
Sir, your time is up.
To those of you who are unsure about the value. Thank you.
Down here, sir, your name and address, please.
Jeffrey Simlick, 309 Lawrenceville Road. Been a resident in Westtown for 56 years. I'm lucky enough to get a chance to go out on the farm to get straw from the gentleman who farms it now, and it is a beautiful spot. I think it should be saved, but I don't know if we should have to pay for it, all the residents of Westtown, to, you know, put our effort in. And I would like to have a show of hands who lives in Westtown, who is on the board.
I'm sorry, what was your
Some gentleman on the board who lives in Westtown.
Just to clarify, by law, you have to be a Westtown resident to serve on the board.
Oh, you have to be on the board too. You live in the township to be on the board. That's good. So you guys are all in it too. It all affects all of us. All right. Well, that's good. A lot of times you don't have that. So, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, your name and address, please.
Karen Cone, 1022 Sage Road, Westtown. It made me question, why couldn't the referendum specifically state that it was for Crebilly Farm? We told the gentleman beforehand that it had to be worded the way it was worded.
Yeah. The state statute says exactly what the referendum may state, so not sure how else to explain it to you. When the Open Space Tax Preservation Act, if the municipality wants to enact an open space tax, be it earned income or real estate or a combination, the General Assembly has said this is exactly what you do and what you say, and the only thing that's blank is the rate, the percentage of the tax that's going to be levied. We can't change any other words.
So the state restricts you from stating why you're collecting the money, which is part of an issue that a lot of people have stated. And I'm more than happy to pay to keep Crebilly, but not give you open, money for 30 years. And you're stating that it is a state rule and you guys have no way around it.
The wording of the referendum, that's correct. We are not permitted to change the way the state statute reads. The only thing they can fill in is the rate of the tax. Sure.
Hi, Eric Peasy, 306 Baywood Road, Pleasant Grove. Coincidentally, there's a nice pond right behind my house. Just to kind of, on a lighter note here, the pond, I moved there in 2000. I used to catch 10 to 15 bass in 90 minutes. The water quality has deteriorated so much, probably from a lot of the lawn services and such. And I guess I assume that the beautiful pond on 926 is part of Crebilly. That's part of that would be the township property. So I'm just curious, with the township, you said passive use only, no active use. Would the township allow?
I believe the pond is on one of the parcels that will be conserved. It's not going to be, that's not.
Okay, so that would be private property?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. I was wondering if they would allow fishing there.
Good question. I like where you're going with that.
And I just, I think the lady brought up a good point about water quality issues, because obviously development seems to impair water quality over time. So I'm just sad that I won't be able to go fish there, but maybe I can wangle my way in. Thank you.
You can always buy the lot, sir. Yes, sir, down here, your name and address, please.
Richard Fenley, 1427 Overhill Road. And I have a question, well, maybe it's two, that will maybe help simplify things for me. How many property taxpayers are there in Westtown?
There are, I think, approximately 3,500 residential and 100 commercial, so 3,600 all total.
I'm trying to figure out just how much of an investment I make. Forget about bond. If we were to pay this outright, write a check. What would that check be for the average taxpayer?
So for what we're talking about, for the tax increases, it works out on average to somewhere in that $175 to $200 range.
No, that's in terms of paying the bond. Forget the bond. If I were to just everyone in town would donate money.
It's
How much
actually
would
outright.
What would be the average taxpayer's donation?
So outright purchase, for $20.6 million,
No,
and then,
for the seven and a half million.
well,
It should come out to
so that would be something like $1,800 each.
About, you said 2,500?
Yeah, it would be about $1,800.
Into 7.5 million.
Or
That
a
should come
little
to
over
certain-
$2,000, I guess you're right.
2,000?
2,000 plus, yeah. So 2,000 times
Okay, about 2,000.
3.5.
I like a check.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, your name and address, please.
Yes, Dana Pono, 909 Hummingbird Lane. If the referendum doesn't pass and the agreement of sale falls through and the land is developed, I believe, Mr. Pomerantz, you said the taxes would go up anyway, correct?
If the property is developed, we understand that, yes, taxes do go up. It's just the nature of the animal.
Okay, is there a set number on that?
No, it's just the nature of does anybody know of taxes that don't go up in development, and any kind of development that's over an extended period of time?
Okay, well, now, if the property is developed, will this account for, will it be necessary for additional police, public streets departments, things like that? Will there be new hires for that as well? Will that be necessary?
It's fair to say that there's a cost of community services, and there's been a study that's been done by Brandywine Conservancy, which has actually been carried out by a gentleman from Penn State who's done this economic impact study for initiatives all over the state, if not all over the country, that indicates that that's the case. However, I'm not sure if this is the kind of meeting that you wanted to go into all that detail. Full stop is, yes, that you can assume that costs will go up.
Okay, and kind of off the topic, but the 65-acre farm at 1013 Shiloh Road, that I believe sold last year, correct? And so that's the proposed development for that to be built on as well, homes?
I'll turn that to the township manager.
I'm going to further defer to township system.
So yes, that is correct. There is a plan pending that is in litigation. However, so it's sort of in suspension. It has not been advanced for quite some time. There's some lawsuit relative to the neighbors about access to that potential property, so it is not advanced. The plan has been filed and it's just sitting with the township while that litigation is resolving itself.
All right, and if that were to be resolved and homes were built on that property as well, taxes would go up as well, correct?
Theoretically, as Mr. Pomerantz said, whenever you extend township services, costs will be associated. Now, there's more residents to pay the tax, so it all depends upon what the services that needs to be provided, whether you're going to accept dedication of the roads, of the stormwater facilities. It's possible they could go up, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Ms. Foster, you've already gone once, so if you don't mind, I'd like to go to everybody who has not yet spoken. Yes, sir.
Yes, Joe Frisco, Oakbourne Road, 311 Oakbourne Road. I'm curious, a few years ago, East Bradford went through a kind of a similar initiative on purchasing the property for Emeryville Hospital. Does this compare anything, can any kind of comparison be done? Because I'm not, I know the residents...
I think he's actually talking about West Bradford.
Oh, West Bradford, okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything to be done to compare? I know that the taxpayers were asked, the same way we are being asked, to have their taxes increased to purchase that property, and they did move forward. Can we compare this in any way?
I have to defer to NLT on that if you know anything about that one.
Nothing specifically on that property, I don't know, Jack, if you do, but 36 other municipalities in Chester County have passed similar open space referendum, such as what Westtown is considering for development.
Okay. And my second comment, question, concern is, you know, for the last 3 years, it seems like 3 years, maybe more years, I've been 110% behind, you know, Crebilly Farms. I mean, it's a beautiful property and so forth, but coming here tonight, it really disturbs me or kind of shocks me that there's no plan. You're asking us to pay a tax for something that we really don't know what's going to go for. I mean, I understand that it's, you know, to preserve the land. 100% behind preserving the land. but having a plan, I mean, Chesland Preserve is beautiful, Strode is beautiful. Just some sort of idea on a plan. Having no idea is kind of crazy in my mind. I don't know how this
I'll speak to that. So it's not that there's no idea, there's an idea. We cannot have active recreation there. So it's for passive recreation. So think trails, think Stroud Preserve, something like that.
So that's a plan I could support on that case.
Well, so that's, if you read any of the grant applications or read any of the grant applications, the introduction or preamble, that's what we're talking about. And again, I distinguish it from active recreation, like we have at Oakland Park. We can't do that with this problem.
I'd much rather see it in passive approach. Okay, thank you for your time.
Any other members, again, who haven't spoken yet, please? I'd like, again, Ms. Foster, I'd like to have anyone who's not been heard from yet. Do you want to speak? No, not yet. If there's still township residents, anybody who's not spoken?
I have one more question, but I have spoken, so if it's possible.
So let's, anybody who's spoken, let's step back for a minute. Anybody who's a township resident who we've not yet heard from, please, let's come forward. Yes, sir.
Jesse Kraus, 306 Beechwood Road.
Go ahead and pull that mic up so we can hear. There you go, perfect.
After all this transpires, if we do pass it, and as we get into the period of what we're doing over there, are the township residents going to have input, whether it be by referendum or township meeting, as to what the actual use is?
Yes. It won't be by referendum, but it will be by an open public dialogue, either at special meetings or at the regular meetings of the board. Correct.
To the police commissioner, what do you think the additional cost for another 500 teenagers into our neighborhood would be for police? You interact with them.
I'll try to give you a simple answer, and that is it's a question that I would address to the police chief as the police commissioner and as one of the 3 members of the police commission. That's not an issue. They come to us and then we sign off on it based on what sounds reasonable or not, so I don't have a number for you.
Okay.
It's a fair question.
All right. Just one comment. I sit on 3 nonprofit boards. Stupid me. And I have some experience with grants. Now, I'm looking at Natural Lands and I'm looking at Jack. And these are guys who have a reputation. They're successful. We were looking for grants for one of the boards. Weren't getting anywhere. As soon as we used a known player, we got $1 million. So my experience would be you go with the people who have been successful at getting grants. So I don't have a problem with grants. A lot of times you don't know what you're going to get till the very end, within days. So that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Tom Will, I'm 1001 Carolyn Drive.
Go ahead and raise that mic up so you don't have to break your back there. There you go.
There we go. My only question is, after listening to this, I'm kind of leaning towards it, but that 0.08% and the 0.42%, what's from stopping that down the road 5 or 10 years from changing into something else, a higher rate?
Well, yeah, as Pat said earlier, it can only be, that's the maximum that can be levied with this referendum. If it were to go above those levels, you'd need to have a second referendum authorizing higher rates. So that's what's preventing the voters voting would prevent it or allow it to go higher.
Okay, so down the road, if this turns say the maintenance costs more, and it's like anything, you get something done to your house, an estimate, and you find out it never goes below this, and it's always way above it. I'm just concerned that down the road 5 or 10 years, that, you know, change this and all of a sudden it's not what we all heard it was going to be the first time around.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid concern about any government services, you know, what the future holds, you know, economic downturn.
So that could be changed down the road possibly?
But again, it would have to be by voter referendum.
Okay.
So that's the check and balance to prevent. It wouldn't just be, you know, middle of the night, you know, the board raises taxes for this purpose. It would have to be by voter referendum.
All right, thank you.
Mike Hayes, 1192 West Fulton Road. Has anyone done a study how much the current open space parks and recs are actually utilized? Like I walk at Oakhorn Park all the time. It's never busy. I mean, I walk at Thornberry right across from the Salt Lake Valley. It's always pleasant. It's not overcrowded. It's only one park, and I used to live in West Goshen. It's a reasonable amount of utilization. The only park is East Goshen that's packed. So what's driving, if Crebilly isn't its solution, ends up being, well, we'll find other ways to enhance Oakhorn.
Yeah, and so you're asking a good question. Has there been an actual formal study? There is a Google app that allows you to estimate park usage. I know Jason Lang in Scotia has got to become a master of that. We don't have, in Westtown, we don't have a dedicated park and rec department the way East Goshen does. So we have done 2 master plan studies of our open space in the last 8 years. Most recently, the Oakhorn Park Master Plan didn't do a formal utilization study, but they certainly did lots of surveys and talked to as many people as possible to get perspectives on park usage. Similarly, in 2014, there was an open space a master plan that was done. Again, that was well before my time, and I don't think there was a utilization study done as part of that, although I could be technically wrong. But certainly, the study of park utilization broadly is something that we've devoted a lot of resources to over that period of time, even if we don't have, I can't tell you in the month of April, you'll have 1,012 people in the park. I don't know those statistics, but we certainly studied the residents' interest in park usage quite a bit.
Second question was, someone mentioned R2. So if this area is not developed, or I'm sorry, doesn't go through, the most the owner could do is R2, which is 2-acre lots. Is that
It's
right?
actually R1. It's like the flex or R1 district. It's actually 1-acre lots. There's 2 ways you can develop, but it's 1-acre lots, not 2.
Any other Westtown residents who we've not heard from yet? Yes, sir.
Jack Embick, 189 Pheasant Run Road. I've seen on a bunch of signs that the open space tax is a forever tax. But isn't it possible in a future referendum put to the voters of Westtown Township that the open space tax could be rescinded?
Yes, in fact, it's the only way that it may happen is via a referendum. The township would have to decide at the time if it has bond debt that needs to be covered, how it would in fact pay for that. But yes, it can be rescinded via another referendum of the voters.
Are we aware of any township in Chester County that has put a referendum before the voters to terminate the open space tax?
I'm not aware of any. Certainly, in my time practicing, none of my municipal clients have done so.
I'd suggest that you look at the sample ballot for West Salisbury Township. The township residents this year will vote to whether or not they want to terminate the tax.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, your name and address, please.
Cecilia Wright, 1151 Lake Drive. I wanted to thank the Robinson family for agreeing to go into this level, having sat through 4 years of meetings. I'd like to thank the board for going to all the extra time it's taken to put something like this in place. I'm hoping for a positive end after the election day. And my question is, do you have a plan for a walking trail as well as some of the other things that you mentioned.
So I don't think anything has yet been officially discussed by the board. I think they want to see how the referendum progresses, how the funding progresses, and whether or not they close on the property before they invest additional sums to discuss and study what's going to be potentially constructed on the property. I think what you've heard is a passive recreation use, which may include things like mowed trails and things of that nature. That's typical with open space usage.
So thank you very much for the energy that it takes from getting all this in place. I appreciate that immensely. And from the National Lands Trust for believing that this can be a beautiful open space. I don't think there is much open space in Westtown Township. I can't think of another 1 square mile section in Westtown Township. I really think it's the last open space. So I do appreciate all the efforts that have gone into it. Thank you.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Let's assume that Crebilly is now open space. Do you plan to use it?
Absolutely.
What
And I
would
have
you-
12 grandchildren that are waiting for this to happen.
I've got my second question I'll refrain from. Thank you.
And the neighborhood that's waiting, and we're organized.
Any other Westtown residents that we've not yet heard from? Yes, sir, your name and address, please.
John Sheehan, 615 Westbourne Road, Westtown. Just to clarify, the two taxes, one is real estate, and again, there's a cap on that, but for the earned income, a referendum needs to be passed to increase that?
Yeah, there's like only a handful of reasons that you can increase the earned income tax above 1%. One of them is if you are declared by the state to be a severely distressed community. Here I'm talking about, when Harrisburg went in receivership because of their problems with their incinerator. That's not in any way, shape, or form anything that we in Westtown need to worry about. The other big one is for the purpose of raising funds for open space acquisition and maintenance. In that case, the tax is capped at 1.25%. So we'd have a little bit more wiggle room for a future referendum to do that, but as I said, that's not on the cards right now. So, but that's the maximum it can be, is 1.25%.
Okay, thank you. And just, I live near the Oakwood Mansion, and I walk there all the time. I rarely ever see coaching them, so I don't know if you're using the Crebilly farm, to be honest with you. And as far as the grant money goes, I do appreciate your hard work and all that, but that's also our money too. So besides the tax money we're talking about, the grant money is also our money, because it comes from the county and the state. We pay for them also, so we're being triple taxed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Abhay Borwankar at 614 Cambridge Road. I like the idea of having an open space like you're describing. I haven't been there, I don't know what it looks like. And my wife and I, we are frequent users of all our parks because we take our dogs and our foster dogs there literally every day. So I just kind of made a list of all the parks in the neighborhood that I visit on an almost daily basis. Okahawking, Gridley Creek, Martin Park, Bonner Park, Willisburg Preserve, Cheney Park, East Ocean Park, Oakbourne Park, and then a short drive away, Strouds Preserve, Bristol and Glen Mills, Chesdon Preserve, and I'm sure there's many more that I don't have my list here. So the question is, why do we need more parks? I've never seen those parks being overused, maybe with the exception of a very short time during last summer of 21, when COVID was at its peak. You go to Okahawking, for example, and find the parking lot full. But you go inside the park and then it's such a big place that you don't see it. Right? The question is, why do we need more parks? Particularly at the cost of taxpayers. Right? I think that's a question that needs to be answered. How much is enough? I could go to a different park. I do go to a different park every day of the week. And then there's still more that I cannot go to because they're doing it. And I am one of those people that I appreciate open space. I appreciate having parks. The freedom it gives you, the fresh air and all that beautiful stuff. But when it comes to paying taxes again, why do we pay more taxes for a park that even fewer people are going to use because nobody uses the other parks anyway? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And may I compliment you on your shirt this evening?
Go Eagles and go Phils.
Yes, ma'am. Your name and address, please.
Ann Healy, and I'm at 1164 Lake Drive in Westchester. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask the gentleman from the Conservancy, but I want to say something at a time first. I'm over 70 years old on this planet, and one thing that we all know is this planet's in trouble. Yes, we have parks. We need clean air, and air has to be processed through nature. That's where we get it from. So saying that we don't need it, I think is very, very short-sighted. I think one of the few legacies any of us can give, not just our kids or our grandchildren, but our great-children, great-grandchildren, and great-great-great-grandchildren, is breathable air and green space. And if you have a $100,000 house, $160 a year is not a lot. If you go to any restaurant in this town, you're going to spend more than that for 4 people to dine in one night, if you include drinks. So I think this would be very short-sighted to say we can't afford it. We can't afford to not do it.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, any other Westtown residents that we've not yet heard from? Yes, sir?
Steve Eddy, 323 Ponds End. Did I hear you right to say that the 8% and the 0.42 are a max, meaning each year we can actually, if we didn't need it, that could be lower?
Yes, so by ordinance, the board can actually set the tax rate at less than what the referendum authorizes. The referendum authorizes the maximum for those 2 taxes that can be assessed via ordinance by the board.
And just the other question, because it's kind of come up, is there any other option or any other plan being floated around right now to save Crebilly?
I have no idea. I'm not from this board.
Thank you.
Last call. Any other Westtown residents that we've not yet heard from? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ginger Gray. I live at 706 Jacqueline Drive. And I guess this question is